Hey everybody, welcome to the Porn-Free Millennial Podcast. We have an esteemed guest on today, my mentor and host of the Finding Traction and Pastors on Porn podcast, Vern Tompke. Welcome to the show, sir.
Hey, it's great to be here. I've so enjoyed hanging out with you, working with you, learning from you as well. I feel younger when I'm with you because you're a millennial, and I don't know, I'm a late baby boomer. So yeah, I always feel really cool when I'm with you, Max. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, appreciate it. And Vern's been talking about uh, problematic porn use for quite some time. Definitely check out his podcasts; they're fantastic. Big helps to me, continuously. And in the past, when I really started to look at my recovery a different way.
Hmm.
So thanks for being on. Today, we're going to be talking about conquering temptation. Vern, I don't know about you, but temptation's everywhere. It seems to be anywhere you go on social media.
Yep.
If you're just watching a football game on Sunday, right? You're a big
Yep.
NFL Cowboys fan. Broncos got a great win yesterday. It was
Oh,
good to
there we
see,
go.
finally.
I was going to watch the game. I didn't, but yeah, the Cowboys are known for more than just football. So I'm with you on that. Yep.
Yeah, so it seems like temptation's everywhere, right? Like I was saying, social media, going on TV, even just going outside,
Yep.
going anywhere pretty much. There's going to be some form of temptation. And I think for the listeners, for your listeners, for people that struggle with porn, temptation is like that gateway to getting into the cycle
Hmm.
of using porn and feeling bad about it, seeing all the negative consequences, and then popping back in. And I think temptation is one of those things that it's always going to be there.
Yep.
Like there's always going to be temptations. There's ways we can reduce it. There's ways that we can live a life where it's less there, right?
Hmm.
But it's still going to be there. So today I was going to walk through the three what's, a concept that I've talked about a little bit,
Hmm.
I've written about, and just get your feedback on it as we go.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's funny because I live here at the eastern edge of the Fraser Valley in Canada, in British Columbia, and Vancouver, of course, the city everyone knows about. So we get all of the smog. It all comes to the end of the valley and gets trapped here in Chilliwack. And when you go out sometimes, especially in the summer, right, where you get a lot of western, and you go outside and you just can almost taste the smog, and that sometimes is a little bit of a word picture of what it feels like to live in this continual, everywhere you go you're breathing in smog, it seems like. And in the same way, I think it fits with this idea of living in a temptation rich, in target rich environment. And even if we're not looking, we're doing or experiencing, people are doing everything they can to capture our attention. I heard someone say we live in an attention economy. You have power by capturing or grabbing people's attention, right? And of course we know the easiest way to do that is a shapely person that goes, "Hey, look at me, buy me." So yeah, I'm tracking, Mac.
Yeah, well put, well put. Yeah, everyone's vying for the attention, and like you said, the eyes typically, for people like us, are drawn uh, to these things. And
Hmm.
so the concept I want to go through today, it's the three what's. It's then what, so what, now what. And what we're going to do is just go through each one by one, and just get Vern's feedback on it. Vern's been in this space for such a long time. Vern's also a pastor as well. So I think getting your feedback on this should be really helpful for the listeners as you go through the concept of the process. And as you listen, just start thinking about ways that you can incorporate this in your life. So the three what's. So the first what is then what? So I think when I was thinking about then what, for me at least, uh, for this concept, it's really thinking ahead of
Hmm.
what's the end result going to be if
Right.
I give in to this temptation. Uh, when I really was struggling with porn and it was really compulsive, it seemed like once I would get this temptation, I get locked in, and I wouldn't really think ahead too
Right.
much. I'd be thinking about like what I'm going to look at, and how I'm going to isolate myself, like what room I'm going to lock myself in, make sure no one comes in.
Yep.
That was more of what I was thinking about versus actually thinking about how this is going to affect my self-esteem, how this is going to affect my view of myself, my identity, but also like my effect with my relationship, who I'm with, uh, the effect of my relationship with God,
Hmm.
and having that sin weighing on me. So really, the first step of then what is really just thinking ahead. You're tempted. There's something there that's drawing your attention. It's starting, the wheels are starting to go to where you're
Yep.
starting to think, okay, I might go to porn. Um, and instead of really, I think, like resisting and like just avoiding it, I think the important part is to think about like the situation you're in and start thinking ahead and saying, okay, if I just keep going with this temptation, I keep acting and giving it life, feeding it, what's the end result going to be? And typically for us, right, the end result is going to be looking at porn,
Yep.
watching it, and then all the negative consequences that go after that. So really then what is thinking ahead, it's having that awareness, but also being proactive, looking ahead to what that end result could be.
Yeah, and I think what you're describing here, we get into trouble, and trouble progresses. Let's put it that way. What it, and the reason it does is what you're talking about is a failure to remember. A failure to remember, oh my goodness, this is what I'm going to feel like at the end. This is what I'm going to have to clean up at the end. This is who I'm going to have to talk to or check in. So everything comes out of it allows to proceed because of our failure to remember. So what you're talking then what is all about the active implementation of the remembering, right? And other people call it play the tape forward.
Hmm.
Play the tape forward. Play the tape forward to the end. One of the guys I interviewed on, I forget if it was on Finding Traction or Pastors on Porn, was Joe Beam. And Joe Beam works with couples who are in severe marriage crisis
Hmm.
or started an affair or in an emotional affair. And he has this exercise he calls the 10-10-10 exercise. And what he does is he tells people, I want you to write out in a fairly exhaustive way what your life is going to look like and feel like 10 days from now if you pursue this affair or continue this affair. I want you to do 10 months from now
Hmm.
and then 10 years from now.
Wow.
Well, that's really playing the tape forward, right? Imagine what Christmases are going to be like. Imagine now you're talking obviously a much shorter term, but it all comes back to the failure to remember. But I would say this: in order to do that, it takes a little bit of preparatory work.
Sure.
You have to have something quick and ready and punchy to be able to um, grab grab onto. Like some guys come up with an acronym
Hmm.
that says, then what? Oh my goodness, ABC. I feel like an ass. I feel like it's gonna lead to bad, it's gonna lead to I'm just doing not a good
Yeah.
job. But they have something
No.
really quickly accessible that they can immediately grab onto. The then what sucks big time. Right. Yeah.
Right.
And they have that. And it's something that they worked on and they can grab. It's got some punch to it, right? So yeah, that's a great exercise and it's a great starting point. Then what? I like that.
Yeah, and just to add on, I know like with my audience, I talk about it just being transparent about going through a divorce,
Hmm.
all that pain that led up to it, during it, and then after it.
Right.
And I try to think about that a lot to when I get these temptations, I have that question of, oh, well, what if I look at this for a little bit longer? Or what if I click on this? What if
Yep.
I look that person up? What if this? What if that? I think back on then what? Well, I'm in a relationship now with an amazing woman.
Yep.
If I keep going down this road, I know what's going to happen. It's really going to hurt our trust. It's going to hurt our intimacy.
Hmm.
We're going to have some tough conversations. I'm going to have to do some soul searching. And I think that it's a good foundation to start with, you know. But like you said, Vern, you got to have some of that preparatory work. You got to think a little bit deeply,
Yeah.
think a little bit more outside of yourself sometimes too, and how that could affect other people as well.
And something that really means something to you. I'll
Right.
give a funny example. Okay. Some of these are, well, okay, I go a few directions here, but one of the things that we talk about sometimes is negative reminders. Sometimes it's not the big negative reminder. I'm going to lose trust with my fiance, my girlfriend, my wife. I'm going to do it's simply okay for me. If I end up looking at porn this week, I've committed to not watch my Cowboys this weekend. Now,
Right.
now the way the Cowboys are playing, that could be a reward.
Sure.
They suck rocks. I mean, they're horrible. And but I just talked to a guy that just relapsed this week, and he said I committed that I wasn't going to watch football if I acted out. Sometimes it's really crazy. Then what is yeah, but then I've committed to take have this negative reminder to remind me that there's bigger negative things in my life, and this
Sure.
football thing is just a symbolic act to remind me I'm actually, you know, I'm actually destroying my life. You know, when my team loses, it really doesn't destroy my life, but it reminds me what I feel is that you really want to feel sad big time. How about having to tell your wife and kids that you've lost your job? How about telling them that that you've gone through this or you're living in the basement suite or as part of that?
Right.
One other thing you said that it was interesting. We talk a lot about triggers, but sometimes I think a better word than trigger is just I use a lightning bolt in my stopwatch diagram, but
Right.
sometimes it's just a better version of a trigger is just a thought bubble. You have this thought, huh? I could look at porn. Boy, I really miss porn right now. Huh? I could do this. Or wouldn't it be nice if, or you know what? I wonder if that device is, it's just this thought. And what you're talking about, then what is a replacement thought? Oh yeah? Well, then what? So
Right.
it's a
Right.
replacement thought bubble, which is I really like it.
Yeah. So we'll hop into the next one. So I think
Yep,
they all kind of lead into each other. So
absolutely.
you have then what? Now we're going to shift to so what. So when I was thinking about so what, it's it's getting your power back. You know, you're actually talking, you know, internally to this temptation, to this thought bubble that comes up of, what if I do this? What if I go this route? What if I look at this? This temptation that you're feeling inside of you, this pull. You say so what to it, and what that really means, it's regaining your power, regaining your independence. When I was thinking about this, what I could not stop thinking about was so many times in my life to where I'd be tempted,
Hmm.
and then it was almost like I was a zombie. I would just be like walking, you know, to my laptop or like my smartphone, almost like
Hmm.
I was in some kind of trance,
Okay.
and
Yep.
just going through the cycle of things to where almost like I kind of relinquished my freedom of choice. I relinquished myself to this temptation and just gave myself over fully to it and just let it take over. And I think Soa is really uh, it's rebelling against that. It's putting your foot down and saying, well, so what? So what? I feel this way. So what? There is a temptation out there. So what? There's an attractive person. So what? I see something online. That doesn't mean that I have to take that next action that I've typically done in my life that leads to all these negative consequences. I don't actually have to do that. I can actually make a different decision. So, what are your thoughts on that step right there?
There's a couple. First of all, let's let me quote one of our mutual heroes, Mr. Dobshoots here.
Right,
He he talks about being a victim versus being an owner. And one of the things we get into is, well, I guess it's just inevitable that I'm going to act out, or I'm just once I get, once this starts, I can't stop it. I'm a victim. I'm a victim to this. It would be like me trying to ski on a black diamond ski hill. I guarantee you I'm going to fall, right? Because that victim kind of thing, as opposed to being an owner. And I think what you're describing is, getting your agency back, getting, your power back as you describe it. And you're saying, you know what? It's just a thought. It's just a temptation. So what? It's like, so what? So I have this temptation. Well, duh. I'm a guy. I'm gonna be tempted, but um I don't have to respond to it by giving into it. It's
Right.
it's like another thing Mr. Dobshoot says is when arousal comes your way, just kind of see it as a whether it's a friend or not so good friend, maybe somebody walking alongside of you yapping at you, right? And and they're yapping at you, um, but that's arousal. Let's just call that arousal. But it doesn't mean that you have to turn to it and engage it, shake its hand, give it a big hug, right? It's the difference, and I think the way Matt, puts it is there's a difference. Arousal isn't something that happens to you, it's something that you engage with.
Hmm.
So we're all going back to getting your power back as part of that. So what? Okay. So I'm feeling really aroused right now. I'm feeling really tempted. I'm feeling really it. I don't have to pretend it's not there. Play this big mind game. No, okay, right? It's not surprising considering what I've looked at in the past, how I've stirred it up, but I just don't I don't need to engage it, especially because of the then what. I will say one other thing, Mac. Realistically though, if you wait too long, if you've heard my stopwatch diagram on
Right.
finding traction, or it's also the guys from Pure Sex Radio did an episode on it. If you wait too long and you move from preoccupation, which is those thought bubbles, and the clock continues to proceed without you um, uh, confronting it with the then what and the so what, you will move into pursuit. And so if you can think of a stopwatch, 1 2 3 4, let's say 6 o'clock down the very bottom is the porn event. If you wait and you don't do any of this self-talk, this confronting these ideas, these thought bubbles, and you're now down to 4 and 5 o'clock,
Right.
you're now speeding up so fast on that ski hill, the trees are coming your way. You have you have waited too long, and now the zombie, the what did you feel like the autopilot is firmly kicked into place, and you don't
Right.
even want to ask those questions anymore. So are, and we'll get to, I know, the next one here. The key word there is early. These are
Yes.
early questions that have to be asked.
Yeah. And the more consistently you do it, right,
Yep.
you start to build. You start to build. You start to ask, so what more often.
Hmm.
You're going to feel that power come back to you to
Yes.
where you have more strength
Yep.
to, and more, I think, discipline to
Hmm.
say no. Because you can look back and say, well, I said no yesterday,
Right.
and that day ended up being okay.
Yep.
I can say no again today. So that's totally right. Yeah, and I think for someone listening, if you're just really struggling, right, it's just building that habit into place and
Right.
kind of forcing it into place because it's really not going to be super easy at first, right? It's not like it's going to solve everything
Yep.
right away, but it is, I think, a habit that you can start replacing
Hmm.
with this habit of porn use, of just asking these questions. It'll
They
allow you
be
to think deeper
Yeah.
about things.
Well, they become just like you. Bad habits have got you here. These become new habits that will move you to a better place.
Yeah, well put. So we've got then what? We've got so what? Now the last piece of the pie is now what? So now what is putting it into action, taking an action, because now you've looked ahead, you've confronted that thought bubble, that preoccupation.
Hmm.
You've gotten your power back, or you're fighting to get your power back.
Hmm.
Now the next step is, well, now what are you going to do? Are you going to make a decision to keep giving that temptation life, or are you going to do something that's healthy that's going to replace it? So I think this step's really important. As going through recovery, having this relationship for like 2 decades, the now what that's sometimes the hard part, right? Is
Yep.
actually taking the steps, because it can we can have all these big thoughts in our head of what we're going to do, but they're not going to come to fruition if we actually don't do something and actually take an action. So now what is, like, in the present, in the moment,
Hmm.
what are you going to do? What are you going to do about this temptation that's coming your way? And I know, like, I'm a part of your recovery group.
Hmm.
Something that we do a lot every week is go through some course material, but also we check in with each other.
Yep.
We check in with each, and I've done a few episodes on it, like fast check-ins. I know
Hmm.
we do a formula. It's like Fastgo, pretty
Yep.
similar,
Yep.
but it's basically we lay out what our plan is, like what our strategy is. We're calling things out, calling out temptations, urges, checking in where we're at with our sobriety. But I think that now what's really, like, you're putting plans into place. You're planning and then you're putting into place. So you're taking action. And sometimes too, it can be changing your environment, right? Like,
Hmm.
I find that's really helpful for me. If I find myself starting to get into unhealthy habits, uh, I need to get outside.
Right.
I need to get somewhere public. I need to change my environment. Also, it could be just like what time of day, what day, where are you when you normally are
Hmm.
having these urges and giving into them. That's
Yep.
another thing of just like timing. Like, if you're having an issue on Saturday, Sunday night with your phone, then now what is, okay, well, now instead of having my phone on me in these times, I'm going to put it in the other room, or I'm going to give it to my wife or my girlfriend, something of that nature. You're taking an action to break that cycle.
Yeah, you what you're talking about is you've got to be able to you've got to be able to have a bit of a strategic mindset here.
Right.
It's the old art of war, those who fail to plan in times of peace. No, let's see. Yeah, those who fail to sweat in times of peace bleed in times of war. Another example I use is the carousel, like the merry-go-round. Even if your horse has gone out of sight, it will come back and temptation will be back in front of you. Even if you feel like, oh, I'm doing good this week, or I'm doing good. I haven't really had a lot of temptation this week. I guarantee you, I just got back from my walk this morning and I heard the next 3 days, it's actually kind of nice out. Next 3 days, we're having an atmospheric river here in British Columbia. It's gonna, rain, 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 big time. Okay, I can plan for that. They said, make sure your gutters are clean. Make sure, those areas. So you have to be able to have a bit of a strategic mindset. You have to be able to, in partly, reverse engineer some of that ritualistic behaviors that you go through and go, you
Sure.
know what? Doggone it. I have fallen 3 times now. We're in the middle of the night. I woke up, I couldn't sleep. And so I turned and reached for my phone and scrolled social media. And you go, dude, let's think that through, right? Where could you confront that pattern? How could you reverse engineer that and come up with a different strategy? Guess what happens next time you wake up at 3 in the morning and can't sleep, right? This is not rocket science.
Right.
The question is, though, now what requires a commitment of your will? And
Mm,
I would say this, most guys are always talking about willpower. Oh, I need more will. I need to be able to stand up to this. Okay. I was saying I would much rather have people say, you know where I want your willpower? I want your willpower and your engagement to come up with a really smart strategic plan. Engage it there so that you don't need willpower when you're tempted to act like a zombie. That's where you need willpower. Guys say to me, well, I don't really want to put screen time on my iPhone, right? Well, that's willpower. That's where you've got to engage your intentionality to say, well, your phone then, well, I want one guy, yeah, I'm always on Instagram. Well, do you have Instagram as an app? Well, not right now. I say, well, can you put it back on? Well, yeah. but it's not on right now. I'm going, it's like, yeah, how many times have you put on your Instagram app and taken it off? It put
Right.
on,
I've
off,
been there before.
right? So now what gets real specific, but it requires you've got to lean into it honestly, right? And you can't play, as one of our guys said, you can't play dumb with yourself. Don't play
Mm,
stupid with yourself, right? If one of the guys I coach, it's been such a great guy coaching. He said, Vern, I'm making you this commitment. I'm never going to act out in the same way twice.
mm.
Now, you could say, dude, does that just mean you're going to be more and more creative in how you act out,
Right.
right? He said, no, I'm gonna, if I fall, if I slip, I'm committing to you that I am going to change my behavior vis-a-vis that action and create a plan that removes that 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 new habit which wants to happen. So
Sure.
um let me ask you, what are you in your now what? And we can get into some of the things I do here, but tell me what your plan of action, what are the big rocks in it? What are the big pieces that just are gotta haves in your plan that without them you're setting yourself up for failure?
Yeah, I mean, I talk about it a lot, like in our group. I mean, a huge thing is daily check-ins with my little brother.
Hmm.
I mean, that's been a rock for
Yep.
me. It's something that I look forward to every day.
Yep.
That might sound weird, but it's a relationship
Hmm.
with someone else. It happens to be my brother, to where we're both on the same mission. We're both uh,
Yep.
we're both aiming to live a porn-free life
That's
and live a
cool.
more
That you
fulfilling
have an
life.
amazing gift right there. That is so neat.
Yeah, it's such a blessing too. It really, I think that's a huge part of it is being able to talk to somebody that's on the same level that's I know you've told me this before. It's good to have like a mentor, someone
Hmm.
ahead of you, someone that's in the same place, and then
Yep.
maybe eventually, once you get some confidence,
Yeah.
helping others out, serving.
Absolutely.
And with my little brother Noah, I mean, that's a rock for me because
Hmm.
a now what for me is I can check in where I'm at. I can check in where I'm struggling. I can check in also where I'm doing really well, where I'm feeling really confident. And it's a great way for us. What we'll typically do is we'll do like a voice memo. Like we both have iPhones. We'll
Hmm.
record a voice memo, 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And whoever goes in first, the next person, they'll listen to it, respond, and then give their check in. And then I'll respond back to him. And typically, I mean, we have a few back to forths. And then if we're having a hard day, right, where there's more temptation, there's more behavior that's where we're like a green light, we're kind of more going into like a yellow light, more caution.
Yeah.
We'll plan ahead and we'll actually say, hey, like let's bookend with each other. Let's
Yep.
follow up before the end of the night. Before you go to sleep, what are you doing?
Yeah.
So I find it's a great way to do that. I've always felt like that was a really big missing piece for me in my recovery. I'd have times where I'd quit for a bit and I wouldn't do it,
Hmm.
but then whenever something would come up that was a historical trigger for me,
Yep.
I didn't really have the tools or the community or like really just like the language to put it in perspective. Like, how can I face this? How can I look ahead? How can I get my power back? What actions can I take? So I'd say that's a huge one. And then I know a part of when we check in with each other with the fast check-in model, right? You've
Hmm.
got feelings, active commitments, your sobriety, and
Hmm.
then threats,
Hmm.
and then tools to combat those
Yep.
threats. I think that the active commitments is another really big one.
Yeah.
And I know that when we talk about it, there's those pillars that are really important. So basically, how you doing in your spiritual life, how you doing with your relationships, how you
Hmm.
doing with your passions,
Hmm.
and then how you doing physically
Yeah.
with your physical health. So I think those are always like really good markers and big stones for me. I think when it comes to now what's is if I'm not putting those into place consistently, I think I'm leaving myself more exposed to these threats. I have less will. I have like less willpower because I'm not fully healthy in these categories. If I feel like I'm doing really well spiritually, I'm really connected to God and my faith, I'm connected with people.
Hmm.
I'm connected to my passions, and then
Yeah.
I'm connected to just my physical health. When those things are all firing on all cylinders, right? When that temptation comes along, it's a lot easier. It's a lot less of a burden to just say no to it, to
Hmm.
dismiss it. Really, just to say like, really, like that. Okay,
Right.
am I going to drop all this momentum that I've built?
Right.
Am I going to drop that for some image on a screen
All
that
this
has no
territory I've gained, all of these,
exactly?
yeah, in my life. I know from our discussions, and I've noticed this, if I could speak to millennials for a second,
Yeah,
I have noticed this as an old fart, the one area with millennials, and I know we've talked about this, that um, is probably the biggest weakness that gets millennials into trouble is a lack of a rhythm of sleep.
yeah.
And
We've talked about that a lot.
yeah, and I almost could put almost as another whole quadrant. Are you getting adequate sleep? Do you have 5 times out of 7? Are you going to bed at a set time, getting up at a set time, as opposed to, well, I played my video game till 3 in the morning, and then I got
Right.
up and I was behind the eight ball. Like some of those dynamics, for me, I know we've talked about just how important that is, for example, in your planning from there. Let me say this. One of the things that my plan has to include, I'm gonna liken create two major buckets of temptation, or two major possibilities of relapse or falling, whatever. The first one is impulse, and one is
Mm,
what I call a slow burn. and let me distinguish between them because they require different strategies. There's a reason why all of the candy bar up in Canada, cheesies, if you're not from Canada and you have Hawkins cheesies, they are very addictive. There's a reason why they're right at the checkout stand,
okay.
as part of that, because it's impulse. I'm already paying way too much for groceries anyways. So I might as well just throw in a candy bar or throw in a bag of cheesies, right? It's impulse. And what I realize, and I'm my wife says I make up stats all the time, which is definitely true. 80% of my relapses, 80% of my falls were impulse.
Mm,
I simply was going along, and all of a sudden I had this squall that blew up on the lake, or I had this wind, this 5 or 10 minute windstorm, and I grabbed something that was close to me, and I just started down the path,
mm.
and it was impulse. Or I saw a remember back to that attention economy we live in. I saw a clickbait, and I clicked on it, and then I clicked on another two, and then the impulse got me. And so my plan has to include impulse control, but not
Mm,
impulse control at the moment of impulse. It's removing those ready-made sources that impulsively get me in trouble. So if I have a website, certain news site that's constantly throwing, you wouldn't believe how good so and so looks in a bikini, or you wouldn't believe who's posed for Playboy, or you wouldn't da da da, and that comes up, and I'm just going, screw it. That site is going on my covenantized block list. Done.
mm.
Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Impulse. Impulse on an app. If I use an app and it's got a back door and I use it once to get on something, done. It's gone. Remember, that goes back to impulse. And that's where especially important for those boundaries to create. So if I just have an impulse and I have access to screen time, well, I'm just going to add my Google app back on my smartphone,
Right.
right? So that's slow. That's for me, that's the majority of my struggles is impulse. The encouraging thing is, the more you choose the right path, the more habitually you choose to respond appropriately with impulse. Well, then what? So what? I get to do that. Okay. The other one's a slow burn. The slow burn is could be partly physiological. It's been a long time since you've been sexual, you had release, or you are going through and you're struggling with an emotion. That's especially where those things, what you're describing with your kid brother, that's where you check it in, where you bring people into your struggle. You let the air out of that growing balloon that is eventually going to pop if you don't have a group, if you don't have a context where you can be honest, man, I'm really struggling this week. My wife
Right.
turned me down, or my boss is ragging on me big time. And you don't have places to let out that slow build. Does the both of those have to be included in your now what?
Absolutely. That's great. Yeah, I think when you're talking about the slow burn, that definitely for me, I think for me, it's when I start lacking confidence,
Hmm.
uh, lack of, I think, self worth. I
Yeah.
think really to me, when I'm not living into my active commitments,
Yeah.
I'm not getting good sleep, good rest. If I'm isolating myself from relationships, if I feel
You,
distant from God,
You've
those are the things
also
that to
you to
me,
to
yeah, go ahead.
to tell it you've also when regret begins to get its claws into you. I've
Yes.
noticed working with you that that's also a sign of that slow burn is building, right?
Exactly. Yeah, like when I have feelings of shame or regret about the divorce and
Yep.
just how my actions with porn and the lying that came with it, the
Hmm.
all of that, the broken trust. When I let that in and I don't give myself uh that grace or the pat on the back to say, hey, like you're repenting, you're sharing your story. When I don't do that and I just let it fester,
Yep.
like you're saying, it will build up and build up. And then if there's an impulse that flies in
Yes.
that's historical to me,
Yep.
then it's like, okay, I'm sucked in. I'm
Yeah.
in zombie mode.
Yeah.
I'm in the gravitational pull of the Death Star. I'm getting sucked in. So I think that's such a great point is to be, when we're thinking about this concept, is to really think about yourself as you're listening to this. What are those impulses that bring you in? And then like, what are those slow burn like feelings
Yep.
or like maybe traumas in your life that
Hmm.
you've used porn to basically use that as a coping mechanism? I know that's a big thing for me,
Yep.
is it's that coping mechanism to make yourself feel better, to numb out the pain. Start thinking of those things, and that's going to help better equip you for when you're asking these questions of then what, so what, now what. You just have a better holistic view of like what you need to do in your life and how you can be honest with yourself, like you're saying, not trick yourself, but like
Hmm.
get to the root of it. And it's been amazing in my life to be able to be more strategic about it.
Hmm.
I know we've had time. I mean, we've worked together now. Like I've been your client. Gosh, was it like two off and
Yeah.
on, like 2 to 3 years?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
And I
I.
remember one time that was big for me was you're like, why don't you just put like some kind of software on your computer?
Hmm.
And I just was like pushing back on it for so long. And then I feel like I did it. And then I was like, I felt like a huge relief.
Right.
I think that one was accountable to you, where like if you go on a site, it'll like send like a text and email
Yeah.
to whoever you put.
Yeah.
And I remember I'd be like writing on my Substack, porn free millennial, and you're like, Mac, everything okay? Like, what's going on, man?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Uh,
it's good to have that layer of accountability to where that it just makes it that much easier. You don't have to fight that every day.
and thank you for improve. You actually have improved this model that I had in my mind of these two buckets because you've actually built just the way you described it. You built the connection, the bridge between the two of them. Sometimes the impulse comes on its own, but it's often the reality that if you fail to address this let's call it the slow build, not the
Slow
slow
build, yeah.
burn.
I
If you
like that.
fail to address that, then you are more susceptible. That will bleed into there's a little doggy door between the two of them. That will
Right.
then make you more susceptible to the impulse when it comes. And I like that. That's a great bridge between those two clusters of temptations we talked about. So
Just
yeah,
because what we're typically at least looking at porn. I was thinking about this today when I was preparing. Is we want the we want the temptation to go away at some point,
right,
and we've kind of taught ourselves, from a young age. Well, if I look at porn, I masturbate it to it. That's me
right,
solving this temptation. Now, hey, okay, I'm good.
yeah,
I'm not interested anymore.
right,
And typically, right, it's digging deeper to see, well, what's that relief that you're trying to that relief right there with like porn, like what's that trying to solve?
yeah,
And I think sometimes we use that temptation as like an excuse to say, oh, well, I saw this really attractive person online, like how couldn't I
hmm,
succumb to that? And that's how I take care. Now I'm good. I don't have that
yeah,
temptation anymore. But then it comes around
right.
again and again and again.
And
So
you've reinforced
yeah.
it, and it's a stronger, that it's like tying a little string around your wrist. One or two you can break, and then you do it 50 times, 100 times, and it's not that easy to break. Yeah, so oh dude, I appreciate this has been super helpful. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, Vern, and any other like advice or just off the top of the head that you have, with your knowledge for just conquering temptation, and anything else that you'd like to add to this would be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, guys, I think the bottom line is this is not insurmountable. This is not, you are not a unique person that can't break free from this.
Mm,
I think what we need is hope. Hope that my life, this could have been in your life from the time you were 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and you're now in your 30s or whatever that is, or even 40s, whatever. This, what's happened in the past does not need to write the script for the future. And I know that it seems, yeah, but I've been doing this for 20 years. I've been doing this for 15, 10 years. I think we have hope. Part of the reason why a podcast like yours is so great is when people look at other people and they go, you know what? If Mac can break free, I mean, Mac went through a divorce, and Mac is not, is in single right now, and he's experiencing, he's not married, and maybe I thought if I got married, I wouldn't have to deal with this, but Mac's not in that place, and look at he's finding success. You know what? Maybe I've sold myself short.
mm.
Maybe I've given away my power, and it's time for me to try to find a way, as you put it, to take that power back. So that's what I would say.
I really appreciate that. Yeah, it brings me to a quote. I think it was from Tim Ferriss, who's got a really good podcast, written a lot of books. I think he said, don't overestimate the world and underestimate yourself,
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
which I just love that. But Vern, I really appreciate you being on. It's always a pleasure
Thanks,
to have
guys.
you and all your wisdom. I know I mentioned your podcast, Finding Traction, Pastors on Porn. Definitely check that out, guys. Absolutely fantastic. We mentioned Matt Dobsheets as well.
Yep.
Porn Free Radio is fantastic. That's actually where I first initially kind of started looking at recovery, was
Hmm.
Porn
Yeah.
Free Radio. Actually, kind of where I'm in the mountains right now. This is pretty close to where I was listening to Matt while I was fly fishing in the
Wow.
mountains after I hit rock bottom.
Yep.
And I was staying at a family cabin, and I listened to, I think I like 20 episodes. I
Yep.
just binged on Matt and listened to him, and then got into a group with Matt,
Hmm.
and then I think he started adding more groups, and then you started to help out with that, and
Hmm.
that's how I got to know you.
Yep.
And then we started to work together individually with
Hmm.
coaching, and
Yep.
I'm a part of your group right now. It's a 52-week group, I believe. Do you want to talk
Yeah.
about that a little bit, just for the audience, just in
Yeah.
case they're
Just
looking for it?
Finding Traction is a video course that I wrote to help guys in their first year of recovery. It's 15-minute videos, 52 of them, and you can do it. You can do it on your own. Bandofbrothers.care, which is the website. You can get information under Finding Traction course. So you can do that. But more ideally, you know where I'm going to go with it. Ideally, it would be great for you to do it with a couple buddies, that have that share a similar heart. And if you maybe don't know a couple buddies, you're going, okay, is there somebody I can get into a group with we're like you did, you came and joined a group of 4 or 5 guys that were journeying together through the material, but it's the material is just the coat hanger to hang
Right.
our relationships on. That's really where the power in the life happens, right? We give we give each other the power. We can do what I can't. So if you're trying to do this without some of that avenue of grace of relationship, it's 10 times as hard. So when I say there's hope, sometimes hope is what you can borrow from each other when you're feeling weak. So yeah, if you're interested in the course, you're interested in a group or just getting the material, just go on the website bandofbrothers.care and you can get more information.
Excellent. Yeah, and I'll make sure to put that in the show notes. And
Thank you, Mac.
yeah, everybody, thanks for hopping on, listening, and keep fighting the good fight. Talk to y'all later.